Right, well, tonight, without any further ado, I have a good feeling that y'all didn't come to hear me. We are blessed to have Brother Ken Hovind. He is worldwide known. He has debated over 100 times with multiple professors at universities and gatherings throughout this world. He comes with a great amount of knowledge, and today I believe he's going to speak on some dinosaurs even more. So, Brother Kent, would you come on in? Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother, for having me. I get it figured out there. Let's see. Hang on, you got to get all the techno stuff. According to evolution, it just happens automatically. I had it all set up here, brother. There. Okay. Oh, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, thank you. Oh, right there. Okay. How many have been to one of the sessions before? How many have not? This is your first one? How many do not understand the question so far? Okay. Well, my name's Ken Hovind. It has been for a long time. I taught high school science and math for 15 years. Moved to Pensacola, Florida in January 1989. And the neighbor kid said, "Hey, would you like to take the paper?" I threw the paper. I said, "No, sir, I don't have a parakeet." The only thing I can think is good for. And he said, "Well, if I got an extra, I'll throw it in the yard, and maybe I can talk you into taking it later." So he threw a newspaper in the yard. And it had an article in there that said dinosaur bones found in Montana from 80 million years ago. And it just struck me as, you know, somebody ought to fix this. You ever see a problem and you say, somebody ought to stop this? Well, that was me that day, and I wrote my first ever letter to the editor. And I said, no, these dinosaur bones they found are from one that drowned in the flood in the days of Noah. The earth is not millions of years old. And they published my letter, and that started a war in Pensacola. You would have thought I shot the sacred cow, brother. It was amazing. I got called all sorts of things in the paper, and finally they invited me to come do a debate at the University of West Florida in Pensacola. And I'd never had a debate in my life except with my wife, and I lost all of those. So, come on now, how many men know what I'm talking about? Put your hand up, you coward. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, there we go. Okay. So I said, sure. And I did my first ever debate on creation evolution, and I slaughtered the poor guy. I thought they can't all be that dumb. I've had 129 of them now, and yep, they're all that dumb. So that's what I do, is I defend the Bible as being scientifically accurate. And in the first couple sessions we talked about the age of the earth and how it cannot be billions of years old. I live in Lenox, Alabama, straight north of Pensacola. In Pensacola we had Dinosaur Adventureland, and now we've moved 70 miles dead north to the little bitty town of Lenox, population 35. We had a car come by last week, so the traffic's getting kind of bad. We have 140 or 50 acres, we're not even sure, right around there when we're building Dinosaur Adventureland. If you get bored, come on by. We'll give you a hammer and put you to work. All kinds of activities based on science and the Bible. And we want to teach kids that science glorifies God, not evolution. So that's, hang on, let me get up here where I should be. All kinds of stuff. We had over 100,000 people come through our last Dinosaur Adventureland. This next one ought to be even better. Okay, right there. This article in National Geographic says, no human being has ever seen a live dinosaur. Hold on a minute. Does he know that, or does he think that? There's no way he could know that unless he talked to everybody that ever lived, right? Did he talk to you before he wrote that? No. Do you think he talked to Adam and Eve or Noah? Probably not. You can't make a statement like that and call it science. That's his religion. He believes that. But it's not true, as we'll see in a minute. The Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Couldn't be simpler. It says in Exodus 20 in the 10 Commandments, in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is. Which means Adam must have seen dinosaurs. There's no other way to read that. God wrote that on a rock with his finger and handed the rock to Moses. You know, the 10 Commandments. Now Moses, being the worst sinner in the world, broke all 10 commandments at once. God had to do it again. But in part 2 of our seminar, we talk about the Garden of Eden. What was it like? You're going to get that about Wednesday. Like, oh, God said there would be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and it would divide the waters from the waters. And this morning we talked about what the original creation was like. It was different than today. There was water above the firmament, where the birds fly, Genesis 1:20. And there was water under the crust of the earth. That's where the flood water came from. By the way, if the water underneath the crust came to the top, the crust would sink in a few hundred feet, speeding the earth up a little bit. Why do all the ancient calendars have 360 days per year? And we got 365.2422. I think the flood, changing the water in the rock, just shrinking the mass a little bit, like ice skaters spinning around, pulling his arms in tighter, they spin faster. That's another story. Anyway, so from the creation, 6,000 years ago, up until the flood, 1,600 years later, and you can get my placemats if you want those, things were very different. During this time in world history, according to the Bible, the people lived to be 900. That's what it says. Read Genesis chapter 5. They're all over 900 years old. So it's a simple biological fact that reptiles never stop growing. They grow all their life. People stop growing. When you're 16 or 18, you're going to quit growing, at least vertically. Some go horizontally after that, but reptiles never stop growing. If they could live to be 900, they'd get really big. Dinosaurs were big lizards that lived with Adam and Eve. So the question would be, did Noah take dinosaurs on the ark? They asked Billy Graham, were there dinosaurs on Noah's ark? He said, nope, Noah's ark did not include dinosaurs because they were extinct before man got here. Oh, look, I love Billy Graham. He's done a lot of good for the world. But he's wrong about that one. And you don't ever give one man your loyalty and say he's right on everything. Okay? He's wrong on that one. Now, I hope Noah kept the woodpeckers in a steel cage of some kind. That'd be important. But you say dinosaurs on the ark, they're kind of big, aren't they? Yeah. The big ones were big, but the little ones were little. You got that? And Noah was 600 years old when he went on the boat. He'd be smart enough to figure out, I don't have to bring the biggest ones I could find. I could bring 2 babies. Just be sure to get a pink one and a blue one. That'll be important later. There's all kinds of reasons for bringing babies on the ark. You bring babies because they're smaller, right? You bring babies. The biggest dinosaur egg ever found is smaller than a football. That's the biggest egg ever found. You bring babies because they weigh less. They eat less. They sleep a lot more. They're tougher. You know, kids fall down and bounce and get up and keep running. Adults fall down and break or lay there for a while. It's common sense to bring babies. Plus, after the flood, they're going to live longer to produce more offspring, and that's why you're bringing them. Why would you bring big elephants on the ark? Bring 2 babies. Why would you bring big giraffes? That'd be dumb. Bring babies of everything. And he only had to bring 2 of every sort. Not 2 of every species. Not 2 of every variety. God said bring them after their kind, after their kind, after their kind. 2 of every sort. Not species. And he only had to bring those in whose nostrils was the breath of life. And only those on dry land. Noah didn't bring fish on the ark. They had plenty of water outside. Okay? And he didn't have to bring bugs, because bugs don't have nostrils. Bugs breathe through their skin, through spiracles. There might have been some on the ark, but bugs can survive a flood just fine. Go any place where there's been a flood. After the water goes down, walk out into the mud and tell me the first thing you notice. Bugs by the millions. They can survive on floating carcasses, floating log mats, no problem. So Noah did not have to bring 300 pairs of dogs on the ark. Noah probably never saw a chihuahua in his life. Can you believe somebody spent all that time, energy, and money crossbreeding dogs to develop the chihuahua? They ended up with a dog that is 100% useless. You can use chihuahuas for bear hunting, and you don't even need a gun. The bear will die laughing when he sees them coming. Noah probably brought a generic dog like my dog, Nicky. We had Nicky for 12 years before I knew what kind it was. A friend of mine came to the house one day. He said, there's my dog laying in the front yard. He was a watchdog. He watched everything. Didn't do anything, but he watched it. He said, Hovind, you have got a full-blooded Canardly. I said, a what? He said, your dog, that's a Canardly. I said, it is? He said, look at it. You can hardly tell what kind of dog it is. I said, okay. So I had my full-blooded Canardly laying in the yard. Noah didn't have to take a horse and a zebra on the ark. Just bring a generic horse kind. Probably the horse, the zebra, the quagga, the jackass all had a common ancestor. I wouldn't argue about that. But it looked like a horse. You know, 4-wheel drive, leather upholstery, the standard horse equipment. Skeptics say, how did Noah fit those millions of animals on the ark? Well, first of all, he'd only brought the land animals. Secondly, only those with nostrils, no bugs. Thirdly, babies, that's common sense. Bring 2 of each kind, not every variety. And how many are there? God made the kinds, and God told Noah how big to build the ark. So I bet, God figured it out where they'd fit, right? He told him how big to build it. How many are there? Current estimate is, there's a book here called Baraminology. It's on my to-read list. If you want to get the address of the author in the front, you can get that. Baramin is the Hebrew word for kind. So baraminology is the study of the kinds. The current estimate is there are about 8,000 kinds of animals in the world. Well, Noah could put 16,000 animals on a boat 515 feet long, and he didn't put them in cages. The Bible says put them in rooms. He didn't have to go around and feed them. They were all vegetarian before the flood came. They were all friendly. Just put out piles of food like the farmer does, drop off the bales of hay, and the cows will find it. They were in rooms, not cages. So God said, bring the beast of the earth and the fowl of the air. No fish, no insects. Just read the story carefully. Skeptics say, Adam could never name all those animals in one day. Oh, I don't know about that. 8,000 kinds of animals at 300 words a minute. You can name them in 26 minutes. When I get excited, I can talk 350 words a minute. Adam could name all. Adam was incredibly smart, Had a super high IQ. He could walk, talk, name all the animals, and get married first day. He came pre-programmed, fully loaded computer, right? Didn't have to learn language. He'd learn how to walk. All that was built right in from the time he came out of the ground. So, and how big was that ark? Well, our problems we have with our theory, which I don't think there are any that I know of, are minor compared to the atheist problems. They say 18 or 20 billion years ago, there was a big bang where nothing exploded. That's what, didn't I show that yesterday? Yeah, okay. And 4.6 billion years ago, the earth cooled down and formed a rocky crust. Yes, boys and girls, the planet Earth cooled and a rocky surface was created. As Earth formed, the surface was like the moon. Craters all over. The surface was hot and there were large pools of bubbling lava. This textbook says there was no oxygen on the earth, but the rocks absorbed it. What? I never did figure that out. The rocks absorbed it, but there was none there. Anyway, and then oceans formed as it rained on the rocks for millions of years. Yes. I'll get out of the way here. Yes, boys and girls, millions of years of torrential rains created the oceans. And swirling in the waters of the oceans is a bubbling broth of complex chemicals. Progress from a complex chemical soup to a living organism is very slow. Boy, it sure is. It don't even happen. That's how slow it is. This guy says, life on Earth may have begun in rocks on the ocean floor 4 billion years ago. So it started in the soup on the ocean floor. The first self-replicating systems must have emerged in this organic soup. Earth is thought to have formed 4.6 billion years ago. It began as a hot ball of rock. 3.9 billion years ago, the Earth cooled enough for water vapor to condense, and there were rainstorms, and it filled in the Earth's oceans. And in these oceans, the first living organisms appeared. This is what the kids are being taught in this town. Am I right? Okay. So their theory says 13.7 or 13.12 or whatever number they want to use. They're always picking a new number. Billion years ago, the Earth cooled down, or there was a big bang. And then Earth cooled down 4.6 billion years ago. It rained on the rocks for millions of years and turned them into soup. And the soup came alive. So great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa was soup. I didn't write it. That's what they believe, okay? So that's the Big Bang Theory in a nutshell. Now, one atheist I debated said, Dr. Hovind, there are 300 varieties of dogs in the world. You want me to believe all these dogs came from just 2 dogs off of Noah's Ark in 4,400 years? I said, sir, would you look at what you're teaching your students? You're teaching your students that all of those dogs came from a rock. He didn't have any more questions after that. Saying to a stock, thou art my father, to a stone, thou hast brought me forth. That's the atheist life verse. Right there's Grandpa. Yep. Okay. I found my daddy's life verse, brother, in the Bible. Matthew 17. Lord, have mercy on my son. He is a lunatic and sore vexed. Anyway, the Bible says the earth was corrupt and filled with violence. Everything was wicked. And God said to Noah, the earth is filled with violence. I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark. And Noah said to his boys, hey boys, go for wood. We got to build a boat. And so they went and got all this wood, and they built this huge boat, Noah's ark. Now, after the flood, Noah's son, Shem, had a son and named him Arphaxad. I always wondered, why would anybody name a kid Arphaxad? Can't you see that kid in kindergarten? What's your name, son? Arphaxad. Do you know how to spell it? No, nobody does. But one day, little Arphaxad's going to get big enough, he's going to be looking around, he's going to start asking questions like kids do. Hey, Grandpa, how come we're the only people in the whole world? Like, where's everybody? We got the whole place to ourselves? Yep, got the whole place, son. And Shem, his daddy, lived long enough to tell that story to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You won't catch that reading your Bible, but when you graph it out, get one of these charts, it's like, whoa, we got points to ponder right here. Like, wow, never thought about that. Mind-boggling. And today, there are still, now there's over 300. When this book was written, there were 270 surviving flood legends. There's a website, creationism.org, that collects them all. They've got 300 now, flood legends. The Hawaiian legend, Hawaii, says, long after the death of Kunihana, the first man, the world became a wicked, terrible place to live. There was one good man left. His name was Nu'u. He made a great canoe with a house on it and filled it with animals. The waters came up over all the earth and killed all the people. Only Nu'u and his family were saved. Is this thing still on? Okay, yeah. You know, that sounds kind of like the Bible story, doesn't it? The Chinese have an ancient story called the Hiking Classic. Their story says, Fuhai, the Chinese consider him the father of the civilization. History says Fuhai, his wife, 3 sons, and 3 daughters escaped a great flood. He and his family were the only people alive on earth. After the flood, they repopulated the world. The Toltec Indians in Mexico have a legend. Their legend says the first world lasted 1,716 years and was destroyed by a flood that covered the highest mountains. Only one family named Coxcox survived. 1,716 years. Well, the Bible dates are 1656. That's not bad for a legend 4,000 years old. Why would there be 300 flood legends? Well, I have a theory about that. I think it's because there was a flood. That's my theory. I think there really was a worldwide, and it wasn't a local flood. I did a debate just last week, and this guy said, I think it was just a local flood. I said, why on earth would God tell Noah to build a boat 515 feet long? Tell him to move. If it's going to be a local flood, be a lot. You could move around the world in the time it takes to build a boat that size. You can move anywhere. Anyway, right at the corner of Turkey and Russia and Armenia is a mountain called Mount Ararat. On a Turkish map, it's called Noah Ongumshi, which means Noah's big boat. Got a map pointing to it. They got signs, drive this way, 5 kilometers to Noah's big boat. They know where it's at. The Bible says it rested on the 7th month upon the mountains, plural, mountains of Ararat. It does not say it landed on Mount Ararat. It landed in the mountains of Ararat. Now there are 4 theories about what happened to Noah's Ark. One theory says they took it apart and used the lumber for buildings. Second theory says it rotted. Third theory says it's still up on the mountain. Fourth theory says no, it's down in the valley. Why would it land on the mountain? Float a sponge in your bathtub, bring your knee up under it, and try to get it to land on your knee. Unlikely. It'll go drift off to one side or the other. Got a hair here. There it is. Okay. Some people keep looking for Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat. I don't know why. They say, oh, it might be up there somewhere. Let's go look in the ice. They say, oh, that could be it, or that could be it. The Bible doesn't say it landed there. I think that's Noah's Ark right there. 1960, a high-altitude spy plane went by, took a bunch of pictures. Said, what is that? It's in the middle of a mud flow. Said, what is this boat-shaped object out here? 1978, it was ground level, and then there was a big earthquake, and either it came up or the ground went down. I don't know, the result's the same. It's now sticking up out of the ground 20 feet, and many people think that's Noah's Ark. What's left of it? It's about 17 miles away from the actual Mount Ararat. Ron Wyatt, WyattMuseum.com, has a whole bunch on this. He's the guy who discovered it, verified it. He died in '99, but he was a good friend of mine. There's Richard Reeves, who took over for Ron, now runs the ministry. They say the ark has collapsed and folded out to the side. Old ships do that. When they rot, they fall out sideways, so they're wider than they were originally. It's called splay, S-P-L-A-Y. They look over that area, they find deck timbers down there, huge beams underground. They find iron rivets. Apparently the ark was bolted together with rivets. Some of the rivets are in the museum in Cornersville, Tennessee. If you want to go, there's a book on it, The Boat-Shaped Object of Doomsday Mountain. They cut a piece of the wood, sliced it, and said, wow, it's laminated, 4.5 inches thick, 3 layers of wood, like plywood, only 4.5 inch thick plywood. That'd be pretty tough. The museum is just, it's an old gas station just north of Alabama-Tennessee line, exit 27 in Tennessee. Mrs. Wyatt finished the book after Ron died about the boat-shaped object on Doomsday Mountain. They say the ark must have landed up here near the mountain and got stuck in the mud. Everybody got off and went their way. Over the next few centuries, mud flows or lava flows pushed it down and it tore the bottom off. Most boats at the bottom have something right down there full of rocks or something heavy to keep the boat right side up. Weight at the bottom. Well, that part got ripped off and it's still up there by the mountain. As the thing was moving along over the centuries, people must have built towers to pay 2 shekels and come see the ark, because the base of the towers are still there. Observation towers, you know, Disneyland kind of stuff. It started up here by Kazan, and now the ark is way down here, 17 miles away. It's been pushed for 4,400 years with lava flows. Kazan, modern village of Kazan in Turkey, the village name means village of 8. Why would you name a village Village of 8? How many people were on that ark? 8. Okay. The government of Turkey said, yep, that's Noah's Ark, and they built a visitor center. Said, yep, come see it, folks. Come see Noah's Ark. Bible says it'll be 300 cubits long. Now, a cubit is elbow to fingertip. There are actually 4 different cubits. There are 5 different cubits that have been discovered in ancient history. The Babylonian cubit, the Egyptian cubit, the Hebrews had 2, short cubit and long cubit. Now, it's interesting. Moses grew up in Egypt as a kid, right? Involuntarily, raised by Pharaoh's daughter. He went to the Egyptian schools. So since Moses edited Genesis, he probably would be thinking in terms of the Egyptian cubit. I can do stuff in metric measurements, you know, but I don't think that way. Somebody says, how far is it? I think in terms of inches, feet, or miles. How many know what I'm talking about? The rest of the world thinks about, you know, meters. I can figure it out, 39.37 per yard if you want, but I have to do the calculations. Moses probably used the Egyptian cubit in his thinking. And that boat-shaped object is 515 feet long, which is 300 Egyptian cubits. Exactly. About 2/3 the size of the Titanic. About 1.5 football fields long. Big boat. In that area, they've now found 12, I think, giant rocks with holes in the top. These rocks weigh 9,000 pounds. And they have, the hole in the top is curved. I don't know how you drill a curved hole in a rock, but they did. And these rocks have markings on them that the Crusaders put there. The Crusaders came through and said, wow, these were Noah's anchor stones. The what? Apparently, they were big rocks held over the side of the boat, called a drogue stone or an anchor stone. The purpose is to keep the boat stable in stormy weather. Kind of acts like a shock absorber, holds you to the water, keeps you level while the waves are coming by. Called a drogue stone. If it really gets windy, it'll turn the boat perpendicular to the waves because they'll drag behind you. One atheist I debated said, Hovind, you are so stupid. Don't you know if Noah had rocks hanging all over the boat, it would slow him down? I said, where was he going? There's no place to go. He's just trying to float, okay? No, he's not trying to go anywhere. Just, here's the boat. Here's the boat's job. Float, land. That's it. Doesn't have to go anywhere. And I'm stupid. Gee whiz. Anyway. He said, yeah, they built a ship with 6 masts one time and the wind twisted it so bad it leaked all the time and couldn't sail. Noah's Ark didn't have any masts. I got to fix that one. Right there. Noah's Ark didn't have any sails or masts. Just a big box to float in the water. Anyway, the Josephus story tells about they show the remains to this day in Armenia, called the landing spot. Now, that was written at the time of Christ. They knew where Noah's Ark was back then. Some scoffers say if you get a boat more than 300 feet long, when it goes over the waves, it'll bend and break in the middle, like Titanic did. Well, not if it had a moon pool. A moon pool is a hole in the middle that allows the water to come up and down inside part way, and it relieves the stress on a long ship. It provides great air circulation. Every time you hit a wave, big piston of water coming up and down, pumping air in and out of the boat. I don't know that it had that, but that is an option he could have done. So anyway, what happened to the dinosaurs? Well, you kids in school are going to be taught dinosaurs died when an asteroid struck the Yucatan Peninsula. How many have heard that story? Asteroid killed all the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. One guy said, nope, they killed themselves off with their own flatulence. I don't know how to handle a theory like that. There's the real reason they went extinct right there. Anyway, what made the dinosaurs go extinct? Hey, they're asking the wrong question. The question is not what made them go extinct, but did they go extinct? Liberals are great at getting us to argue about the totally wrong topic. They'll say, Hovind, do you think we should teach creation in public schools? I say, well, that's the wrong question. The question is, should we have public schools? According to the 10th Amendment, the federal government shouldn't be involved in anything not spelled out in the Constitution, which is only a couple pages long. No, they have no jurisdiction being involved in education, welfare, drug enforcement. That's a state issue. That's another story. Anyway, don't get off on that one, why the schools went public. After dinosaurs got off the ark, they faced a very different world. Things had changed. Remember, before the flood they lived to be 900. After the flood, 400. Then 200. Then 100. Something changed. I think the canopy that used to protect them was gone. The perfect Garden of Eden soil was now destroyed, all mixed up with other stuff, and not going to produce crops like it used to. Air pressure was less from the canopy being gone. It had two problems, dinosaurs did. Number one, the climate had changed. They could not live long enough, and some of the big ones probably couldn't even live long enough to reach maturity to produce babies. Second problem was even worse. People hunted them. But back in those days, they called them dragons. The word dinosaur was just made up in 1841. Before that, the same animal called dragons. If you get 1891 dictionary, dinosaur is not even in there. Dragons is mentioned in the Bible 34 times. If you look at a 1946 dictionary, it says dragon, now rare. As the population of people began to grow after that flood, the population of dragons began to go down. Because nobody wants to live next door to a dragon. The same thing happened right here in this part of Mississippi. How many grizzly bears are roaming loose in the woods in this county? 0. How many were there like 300 years ago? Isn't Daniel Boone famous for killing bears, you know? What happened? If it came on the evening news tonight that there were 5 grizzly bears roaming around, is this Clark County? Lincoln County. If it came on the evening news there's 5 grizzly bears roaming around Lincoln County, what would happen by 6 o'clock in the morning? They'd all be dead. Every redneck in 4 states would be out there with a rifle trying to shoot one, right? And whoever got the biggest one would be a hero. They'd have his picture in the paper, Bubba shot the grizzly bear and saved the village, right? Well, that's what happened to the dragons. Man, if you could figure out a way to kill one, you'd be a hero. Run them off a cliff, put them in a trap, poison them somehow, I don't know. There are lots of reasons they would kill off the dinosaurs. Kill them for meat, or because they're a menace, or to be a hero, or just to prove you're superior. Why do they try to go shoot the biggest deer? Or for medicine. Gilgamesh is famous for slaying a dragon in the Gilgamesh story. The legend in China says a guy named Yu surveyed the land of China and divided it into sections. He built channels to drain the water off to the sea and make the land livable again. Many snakes and dragons were driven from the marshlands. It's just standard. You're going to take over a new area, you got to drive off the dragons and take over. Build your city. The Chinese calendar has 12 real animals. 11 still alive today. and a dragon. Why would they put one mythical animal with their 11 other animals? There's an Egyptian palette showing long-necked dinosaurs. That was from 3,000 years ago. They knew about them. It's on all kinds of ancient artwork, ancient pottery. Here's a hippo tusk from Egypt showing what appears to be a dinosaur. We can go for 2 days on this topic about dinosaurs. If you read the book of Isaiah, it talks about a fiery flying serpent. There really were flying serpents. Herodotus wrote about winged serpents at the time, 400 BC. And we could spend 2 days on that if you'd like. Get our video number 2. The Babylonian god Marduk is shown pictured on top of a fire-breathing dragon. You say, Brother Hovind, you don't believe in fire-breathing dragons, do you? Yeah. Job 41, out of his mouth go burning lamps and sparks of fire leap out. Out of his nostrils goeth smoke. I've seen deacons do that at Southern Baptist churches, brother. His breath kindleth coals, and a flame goes out of his mouth. That's what it says. I didn't write it. Read Job 41. If you get the book of Daniel in the Catholic Bible. By the way, preacher, do you know why the Catholics are glad Jesus was crucified instead of stoned to death? They used to stone people to death, but Jesus was crucified, and it's a good thing, because the priest goes like this all the time. Otherwise, like this all the time. Never mind. Okay. And if you get a Catholic Bible, it's got 2 extra chapters in the book of Daniel. It says in Daniel 14, there was a great dragon in the place, and the Babylonians worshipped him. And the king said to Daniel, behold, thou canst not say now that this is not a living God. Adore him therefore. And Daniel said, I adore the Lord my God, but that is no living God. Give me leave, that's give me permission. Military still uses that word. Go on leave, get permission to go somewhere. Give me leave, O king, and I will kill this dragon without sword or club. And the king said, I want to see that. I'll give you leave. Then Daniel took pitch and fat and hair and boiled them together and made lumps and put them into the dragon's mouth. And the dragon burst asunder. Well, what is this? Well, we know that Daniel was a man who understood science. That's why they were taken captive and put in Babylon. And Daniel would have known that pitch is made from tree sap, and it's sticky. Fat is salty tasting, and just about all animals like things that are salty tasting, like potato chips, you know. And hair won't digest. Mixed them all together, fed them to the dragon. He liked the taste, but couldn't digest them. And they plugged up his intestinal tract, and he burst asunder. Because these were the days before Roto-Rooter. So, Saddam Hussein rebuilt the ancient city of Babylon. It's interesting. George Bush always called him Saddam Hussein. His name is Saddam. Well, I found out Saddam means prince. Same spelling, different pronunciation. Saddam means horse's rear end. Those political jokes at high level that nobody gets, you know. Saddam had his picture put with Nebuchadnezzar on their coins. He rebuilt the ancient city of Babylon. The old city, which was destroyed in, 500 BC, was rebuilt by Saddam Hussein. And every 10 feet around the wall, there's a brick that says, I rebuilt the city of Babylon. And all over that wall, there are carvings of dragons and lions and dragons with scales on them. One friend of mine in the military said, yep, here they are, Brother Hovind, you're right, and I'm sweating to death. That's the next question. Why would they put dragons on the walls of a city built in 600 BC? Maybe because they knew about them? They were still alive in 600 BC. We built a model of it for Pensacola Dinosaur Adventureland. Alexander the Great said his soldiers were scared by dragons when they conquered part of India. Here's a Roman mosaic showing 2 long-necked dinosaurs fighting, or necking. Boy, that would be necking, wouldn't it? Anyway, how did they know about dinosaurs at the time of the Roman Empire? There are legends from all over the place of people killing dragons. We got to quit here in a second. But it's just every place. If you look at the Beowulf story, is about him killing a dragon. There's Beowulf. This is written in English. I can only read one word on the page. Duh. English has changed, okay? But when they translate the story to modern English, it says, Beowulf killed Grendel the dragon by pulling off one of his arms, and the creature bled to death. There are legends by the thousands of people killing dragons, and I could talk for a long time on that. There's a Viking woodcut on a Viking ship, shows a guy being swallowed by a dragon. Vikings put dragon heads on their boats. Why would they do that? There's a good book, After the Flood, if you want a whole lot more on that topic. The famous Norwegian hero Siegfried slew a dragon. When you go to Europe, all over castles over there in Europe, there are dragons all over these ancient castles. Marco Polo said the emperor raised dragons in China to pull his chariots in his parades. There's a piece of brass with 2 dinosaurs carved on it. They got it under a rug in the castle in Europe. You can't see it unless you ask for it. They don't want people to know about it because it goes against the theory, I think, of evolution. Ancient coins often show somebody slaying a dragon. As the population grew after the flood, by 1600, there was only 500 million people on the planet. Today, there's 7.5 billion people. So in the 1600s, lots of the world was still unexplored. Of course, it makes sense for them to put dragons on their coins in the 1600s. A lot of them were still alive. Russian medallion shows a guy killing a dragon. Here's another guy. It's just everywhere. And I collect stuff like this. I probably got way too much information on it. But I think we've been lied to, folks. Dinosaurs have always lived with man. And man has killed off most of them. And there could be a few still alive, like Loch Ness Monster kind of stuff. We'll get into that some other time. Let's see, right here. Get my video number 3 if you want more on that. This is a cave painting from Australia. The natives are dancing around what looks like a plesiosaur, the blue one here. Apparently, they're upset because it ate their buddy. It was right there in the belly. I think that's what the picture probably means. This guy said nobody's ever seen one. I don't think he knows that. Down in Peru, in Ica, Peru, they found, it's the driest desert in the world. They've now found 50,000 stones down there in burial tombs. In these burial tombs, they find these stones that were carved about 300 BC to 600 AD, and they show dinosaurs on them. Why would they put dinosaurs on the rocks 2,000 years ago? The Nazca burial stones, they're called. We could spend 2 days just talking about that, if you'd like. But they have every known dinosaurs on these things. The stegosaur, the triceratops, brachiosaur, it goes on and on. This is one in our museum. Shows the dinosaur holding a guy by the neck. There's one where the guy cut the dinosaur's head off because apparently the dinosaur killed his buddy, and there's the body inside and his head out there. There's a guy stabbing one through the neck. These are all carved on rocks made 2,000 years ago, folks. I think we've been lied to, brother. I think Satan is using God's own creatures to turn people away from God. And I am sick of it and going to do something about it. Our website is drdino.com. Our phone number is 855-BIG-DINO. If you want to talk to me, hit extension 3. It'll take you right to my cell phone. But some of these dinosaurs show circles on the side. Now this is interesting. Why would they put circles on the side of the dinosaur? Remember, all they found was dinosaur bones for centuries. But in 1998, someone found fossilized dinosaur skin, and it had circles on the side. Maybe as a heat sink or something, like alligators have the spots on their back to absorb heat or get rid of heat. I don't know. But they had circles on the side of the skin. There's a guy cutting the head off of one. There's a guy riding one. This guy apparently made friends with one. He's petting him, I think. They put them on pottery, ancient artwork, ancient cloth fabric shows dinosaurs woven into it. I think we've been lied to. And Satan is doing the best he can do to use God's critters against God. In Cambodia, there's a temple, kind of like Indiana Jones' old temple, you know, all grown over with vines. On the side of the door, there is a carving of a stegosaurus. The temple was built in the year 1100. Way before we found any stegosaur bones. Acapulco, Mexico has thousands of dinosaur figurines buried out there. So, we cover much more on that in our college. So this guy says nobody's ever seen one. I don't think he knows that. Let's see. For sake of time here, if you ask, we can bring it up Q&A if you want more. Roman sword showing a dinosaur on it. Dragons from sailing ships. It just is endless. There's one more thought I want to get to and we'll quit here. All right. So, if it's true that dinosaurs have always lived with man, and I think it is, are they mentioned in the Bible? Oh yeah. Dinosaurs in the Bible. In the book of Job, talks about Behemoth and Leviathan. We'll bring that up another time. We've got to take a break. But yes, dinosaurs are mentioned in the Bible, not by that name, because that name wasn't made up till 1841. But we'll cover that when we get more time. So, if you've been lied to and you've been taught the evolution theory is true, they probably started when you're 4 years old, teaching you dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. I spoke at a public school one time, brother. There were 300 first graders in the room. Try that sometime. I said, boys and girls, when did dinosaurs live? Instantly, all of them shouted out in unison, millions of years ago. These kids can barely read, and they've already been indoctrinated. The beginning stages of the evolution theory. You have to have billions of years for the theory to look good. And it's not billions of years old. We'll cover that another time. So I think it's time somebody does something about it, and that's what our ministry is about. If you want to help, come help us. Bring a hammer. We got lots to do in Lenox, Alabama, building Dinosaur Adventureland. If you don't want to help, get out of the way. We're going to do it anyway. So, all right. Let's take about a 10-minute break, brother, and then questions.
That's it. We're going to take a break, and about a 5-minute break, give you a chance to stretch your legs and to take a restroom break and come back. Around the time of 6:30, we're going to start the Q&A. Right now, we're fixing to take up a love offering for the ministry. If you're writing my check, make it to CSC. That's easy for me. Or if you want to write it out, it's Creation Science Evangelism. And in the same basket, you can also, if you have a question, write that down. If it's already passed by and you think of that, do that. No question is off key. And maybe the question you have may be geared, and don't be embarrassed, well, like, I'm a Christian, but I'm asking this question. Maybe it's a question you're hearing, and you don't know how to answer. How do I answer that? Anything it goes along that, we'll present those and get the question according to what the hint believes, and maybe give you even more tools in your tool chest. That's what it's all about. I'm going to ask our men if they would to come forward so we can take up the offering, and as soon as that is over with, we'll take a 5-minute break and we'll be back in here and get back to business. All right?
All right, come in, come in. Last one sitting down is no good. Nothing here. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I got it. Yep, ready to go.
Okay, we're fixing to get started again. Hopefully everybody had a chance to walk around a little bit and get. The latter part will be just as good as the first part. I hope you find it as intriguing and as interesting as I do. I think I've watched all of his series and his college courses that go along with that that he has, and it's just a plethora. I mean, I don't know how he obtained in one lifetime as much facts as he has. I do want to encourage you, when we get through this, you'll have, after that question and answer time, we end our seminar. He does have a table set up in our Family Life Center with a lot of the books, some of the diagrams, the placemats that he has, CDs, DVDs, I should say, would be the correct words for it. But a plethora of stuff out there for you to take a look at. Maybe something you want to take home. Maybe be a part of a study group, your discipleship training, even Sunday school lessons, things like that would be a great thing to get in. We need to be talking more about creation and debunking every opportunity we have of how the world views evolution as it is right now. So without any further ado, and we'll turn it back over to Brother Kent, and then when he finishes this part, we'll go straight into our questions and answers.
All right, I'll tell you what Elizabeth Taylor told her last husband. I'll try not to keep you too long. Dinosaurs in the Bible. You say, come on, dinosaurs in the Bible. Well, if you look at the book of Job, dead center in the Bible, just before Psalms, it says Job was a perfect man. He feared God and hated evil, and he had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And Job had thousands of sheep and camels and oxen. He was the wealthiest man in the whole area. Now, before the flood, the people lived to be 900. Job was probably written after the flood because Job lived long enough to have everything. He had 10 grown kids out of the house. They all got killed. Then he had 10 more kids and saw his great-great-grandchildren from his second family. So you got to live quite a while to accomplish that, I would think. So probably around, lived probably 300 or 400 years. But Job was having a fine day, and the messengers came and said, hey, your oxen and asses got stolen, and your servants got killed, and the sheep got burned up, and the camels got stolen, and all your kids died. He's having a bad day. Lost everything. And Job said, the Lord gave, the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Sometimes bad things happen to people, and you don't really know why it happened. So then the devil came and gave Job boils from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. And then his wife turned against him. He's lost it all. The Bible says the wife is supposed to reverence her husband. One guy told me his wife treats him like a god. She offers him burnt sacrifices 3 times a day. But Job said, you talk like one of the foolish women. Can't we receive good at the hand of God and not evil? And then his 4 friends came to visit him. And one of those guys was the shortest man mentioned in the Bible, Bildad the Shuhite. That's pretty short. These 4 guys came and they talked to Job for 35 chapters. Most of the book of Job is these guys arguing back and forth with Job of why everything went wrong. Like Eliphaz said, Job, whoever perished being innocent, you must have done something wrong. That's the typical wisdom of this world. If something bad happens to somebody, we usually think, oh, they must have sinned. Now listen, if somebody's in the hospital getting their gallstones taken out, don't go say, hey brother, these aren't gallstones. These are tithes and offerings. God's getting them out of you one way or another. Don't do that, okay? You don't know why it happened. So Job is sitting there scraping the pus out of the boils. And he said, I wish God would answer me. Why did you do this, God? I wrote a book series called Why on Earth Did God Let This Happen, for Heaven's Sake? I think we got it on book 1 on the table out there. Now, Job did not know about Romans 8:28. Hadn't been written yet, but it was coming. All things work together for good to them that love God, to them that are the called according to His purpose. Really, all you have to worry about in this life is make sure your heart's right with God. Everything will be fine. Now, it doesn't say everything is good. It says it'll work together for good. I'll show you. Have you ever been hungry? Anybody ever been hungry before? Suppose you come to knock on my door. Hey, Brother Hovind, I'm hungry. I'll say, sit down. I'm going to give you a cup of flour. That don't sound good. I got it. How about a spoonful of salt? That'll taste good. Nah. How about a spoonful of baking soda? Let's pour that down your throat. Nah. How about a cup of Crisco? Nah. How about a cup of buttermilk? Nah. How about let's mix them all together and make biscuits? All those lousy tasting ingredients work together to make biscuits, don't they? And God promised everything will work together for good. He didn't say it'll all be good, but it'll work together for good if you love God. You just keep your heart right with God. That's all you got to worry about. And by the way, that'll be a tough job, because the heart's deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. So finally, in chapter 38, the Lord answered Job out of a whirlwind. Now kids, listen carefully. If a tornado ever starts talking to you, pay attention. Right? And Job said, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? In other words, Job, your 4 friends did not know what they were talking about. So be real careful about building some great Bible doctrine from a passage in the book of Job, because you better look and see who's talking first. Like one of Job's friends said, the dead don't know anything. Okay, it's true he said that, but what he said is not true, because God said he's an idiot. So finally, in Job 38, God said, Job, gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me. Where wast thou when I laid the foundation of the earth? I read that 48 years ago as a brand new Christian. I thought, what kind of question is that? Here's God saying, Job, where were you when I built the earth? God, you know he wasn't there. Why would you even ask a question? Well, the purpose is not to get an answer. The purpose is to get an attitude adjustment out of Job. Sometimes you got to ask the right questions. See, God searches the imaginations of the thoughts. Jesus knew their thoughts. Psalms, he said, God knows the thoughts of man. I know their thoughts. God knows everything you're thinking. But Jesus, knowing their thoughts, Luke 11, he knows it all. Anyway, Job doesn't answer, so God asked him another question. Declare, if thou hast understanding, who hath laid the measures thereof? Job didn't answer. God said, have you entered into the springs of the sea? Did you know scientists did not even know there were springs in the sea till 1977? Science is slowly catching up with a few parts of the Bible. God said, where is the way where light dwelleth? I read that, I thought, whoa, that is cool. I taught physical science for 15 years. Light doesn't stay in a place. Light is in a way. As for darkness, where's the place there? Do you know darkness can't move? Only light can move. Now we're the children of light. We're supposed to be on the move. Do something for God. Okay, find something to do and get busy. Go do it. The Bible says the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Gates don't attack you. You attack them. We're supposed to be on the move. Anyway, God said, by what way is the light parted, which scattereth the east wind? I read that, I thought, whoa, this is cool. Does the light cause the wind? Ask any weatherman. Sure does. Sunlight shines on the ground, heats up the air expands. We have wind on the earth because of the light from the sun. Yeah. God said that 3,000 years ago to Job. God said, can you send lightnings? Boy, it's a good thing I can't. How many of you can think of somebody that's lucky to be alive because you can't send the lightnings? I can think of several. Okay.
That's right.
God said, can you send lightnings that they may go and say unto thee, here we are? Wait a minute. Is God telling Job electricity can be used to send a message? Aha, like radio, TV, email, cell phone, yeah. Electricity can talk, send a message. God goes through this, chapter 38, 39, 40, 41. He asked Job 84 questions. Job never answered one. These are the same kind of questions you dads have to ask your kids. I have 3 kids, one of each. Kids get to a certain age and they start to get kind of cocky and they think, you know, they ought to make the rules around the house. Kid comes in one day and says, hey Dad, listen, I believe I should be allowed to stay out till 4 in the morning. After all, I'm 10 now. And the dad says, hold on just a minute, kid. You'd like to know why you can't stay out till 4 in the morning. Well, son, let me ask you a couple questions. Who pays the electric bill around this house? Who's paying for the house? Who's paying for that hot water and soap you took a shower with about a month ago? Who pays for that food you eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat? Who? Son, the Bible is very clear. He who payeth the bills maketh the rules. 2 Opinions chapter 4. See, son, that's the golden rule. He that hath the gold makes the rules. And if you want to make the rules around the house, then go get your own house and pay your own bills, and you can make your own rules. But if you're going to sleep under my house and eat my food, you're going to do it my way. You got that, son? This is kind of what God's doing to Job. He's asking Job question after question. Job's not saying a word. God says in verse chapter 40, behold now, behemoth. Now what on earth is a behemoth? Well, some reference Bibles say it might be the elephant or hippopotamus. No. Behemoth is a long-necked dinosaur like this guy. A brachiosaur or the apatosaur or the cetosaur. It's got a big seat. Or maybe a blondosaur. You just have to talk to her kind of slow. There are all kinds of long-necked dinosaurs. It says, eats grass like an ox. People say, well, elephants eat grass. Yeah, a lot of animals eat grass. Okay. His strength is in his loins. His force is in the navel of his belly. The biggest part on him is his belly. Well, okay. Elephants have a big belly. Hippopotamus have a big belly. Brachiosaurus has a big belly. He has a big belly. So does he. Okay. That is just wrong at many levels, you know. He moveth his tail like a cedar. Now hold on a minute. His tail is like a cedar tree. Have you ever seen an elephant's tail? Would that remind you of a cedar tree? No. How about a hippopotamus tail? No, not like a cedar tree. You know, before they put those comments in the Bible, those reference Bibles, they should at least read the passage before they comment on it. At least read it once. His bones are like bars of iron, strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. He's got big bones. We've got a dinosaur toe bone in our museum. That is one of the bones from the toe of a brachiosaur, this guy. Now kids, this is going to be complicated, so listen carefully. The reason he had those big toe bones is because he had big toes. And he had those big toes because he had a big foot. Here's a kid taking a bath in a brachiosaur footprint. And he had those big feet because he had a big leg to hold up. 20 feet tall, just the leg. Biggest one they ever found was probably 60 feet tall. Estimate was it weighed about 100 tons. That's equal to 14 school buses put together. That means if he was to come by and step on you, you would be deeply impressed by him. You would be road pizza. By the way, brother, I have a new invention. It's going to make me a multi-trizillionaire. I'm going to make so much money off of this thing. I'm going to share it with you, but don't beat me to the patent office. This is my idea, okay? I'm going to save so much money for the highway department, construction crews, and utility companies. I'll be able to buy the whole United States. I have invented a shovel that will stand up by itself. You won't need to pay that guy to lean on it anymore. Yep, don't you wish you'd thought of that? Okay, anyway, he's the chief. He's the chief of the ways of God. He's the biggest animal God ever made. Risheth, the chief, the beginning, the principal thing. He's the biggest. He's the chief of the ways of God. Now, question. God is asking Job all these questions, and he showed him Behemoth. He said, behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. Job knew about these animals. He could see one. And all God's doing is trying to change Job's attitude. I think we need the same thing. We don't understand who God is. You know, brother, we get together and we pray, Heavenly Father, bless the bunch as they crunch the lunch. Do you realize who you're talking to? Sometimes you ought to get alone by yourself and just say, Heavenly Father, and then stop, shut up, and just think about what you just said. Who are you talking to? How big is your God? Is your God big enough to tell you what to do and you just do it without question? How big is your God? Does God tell you what kind of clothes to wear? 1 Timothy 2:9 says women should dress modestly. My daddy said, if you're not in business, don't advertise. Does God tell you how to cut your hair? Does God tell you what kind of speech to listen to? No corrupt communication. Does God tell you what to watch on TV? What if you made a rule around your house that if you see somebody on TV who is not modestly dressed, you shut it off for 2 hours? If you hear a curse word, you shut it off for 2 hours. If you hear him use God's name in vain, you shut it off for 2 days. How much would you watch? God tell you what kind of music to listen to? The Bible says, speak to yourselves in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. See, God created a male and female, and he said it's good for a man not to touch a woman unless you're married to him. He said the adulterous will hunt for the precious life. And boy, they are, these movie stars that get married again every 3 days. Always hunting for the precious life. They don't have a clue what it is. The adulteress will hunt for the precious life. God created every great thing. He created the whales, created everything, including dinosaurs. And Satan couldn't fool Adam with dinosaurs. Adam named them. He couldn't fool Noah. Noah had them on the ark. Probably babies. For the next 4,000 years, though, they gradually became extinct. And in 1809, somebody found the bones and put one together for a museum. And the devil said, here's my chance. These critters have always lived with man, but these people today don't know that. I'm going to tell them they lived millions of years ago. And if they believe it, it'll make them doubt the Bible. And boy, has it worked good. For the last 200 years, kids get a book like this in school. I can read about dinosaurs. Would anybody like to take a wild guess at what the first sentence in the book says? Millions of years ago. How many kids are being taught that in this county? At your expense. Aren't you paying for it? Millions of years ago, dinosaurs roamed the earth. Kids go through museums with dinosaurs up there, and that's the first thing they learn. Oh yeah, 65 million years ago, dinosaurs roamed the earth. Well, the Bible says Behemoth lives under the shady trees in the covert of the reed and fens. Now, the word fens is an old English word that simply means the swamp. You know, the biggest swamp in the world is in the middle of Africa. Right there. 55,000 square miles. Bigger than the whole state of Mississippi. Most Americans don't have a clue how big Africa is. Here is Africa next to the United States. That swamp is bigger than any one of those yellow states. Let's see, Mississippi is 48,000 square miles. The swamp is 55,000 square miles. That swamp in Africa is 80% unexplored today. Imagine an area the size of Mississippi on planet Earth that's still not been explored. A missionary friend of mine was there for 43 years. When he showed an apatosaurus to his pygmies that he was witnessing to, they said, oh, that's Mokele Mbembe. He lives out in the swamp. Don't get close, he's not friendly. He said, guys, that's a dinosaur. They've been dead for 70 million years. They said, we don't know about that. All we know is we see them out there in the swamp once in a while. You know, there have been thousands of reports of dinosaurs still alive. I don't think there's many. I don't think they're very big. Not as big as they used to be. But there's some still alive, folks. Japanese fishing boat caught what apparently was a plesiosaur, made a special stamp out of it for Japanese mail. Off the coast of California, back in 1925, this critter washed up on the beach. That's the head. The neck was 20 feet long. One guy came and examined it. He said, my examination of the monster was quite thorough. It had no teeth, the head is large, the neck 20 feet long. I would call it a type of plesiosaurus. Laying on the beach in California in 1925. There's the plesiosaur, the chronosaur, the elasmosaur, several similar ones. 20-foot neck. One atheist said, "Oh, Hovind, you're so stupid. Don't you know that was a whale?" I said, "Just exactly where is the neck on a whale?" And I'm stupid. Gee, anyway, we cover a whole lot more on dinosaurs that might still be alive on video number 3 of my series. You can get the whole thing for $50, all 18 hours. We just want to reach the world with the gospel, brother. If we can help, that's what we want to do. Our time is up. But I think I'm tired of the devil using God's critters to teach a lie. I think we ought to do something about it. Somebody in Mississippi ought to get busy and do something about it with the kids here. Start a creation ministry. If you want to use my stuff, please do. Okay, question and answer time. Any questions, fair game? You got them on paper or come to the mic?
All right, that's what we're going to do. If you want to ask the question live, you by all means come and start a line. If not, I've got some questions that's been passed to me, and we'll pass those over and read those out as I was giving them. So let's start off. First we're going to do is one that was yesterday. Got some clarification. It's actually 2 parts. The question has to do with Adam and Eve. Was created on day 1, and then just a little later in Genesis it talks about how it goes in more detail of how Eve was made. Why was there a split in the scriptures for that? Okay, placed together.
Right, very good question. Chapter 1 deals with all 6 days of creation. Chapter 2 goes back and focuses in only on day 6, and it gives a whole lot more details. So some people say there's 2 creation accounts. No, it's the same thing. It's just giving more details of day 2. Of day 6. So chapter 2 says God made Adam, then he put him in the garden, and he made the trees to grow. Well, the rest of the world's already full of trees. Hang on, I've got that on seminar part 7. Supposed contradictions in the Bible. I cover probably 30 of the supposed contradictions. Let me open that up here. Remember I said I've got over 7,000 slides, and it helps if you ask the questions in the same order that I've already got the answers. Hang on. But to answer that, let's see. Part 7. So in chapter 2, God makes Adam, then he puts him in the garden, then he makes trees to grow in the garden. The rest of the world's already full of trees. These are only trees in the garden. Then he makes 1 more of each animal. The rest of the world's already full of animals. And so he makes 1 more of each so Adam can name them and select a wife. And he ends up not wanting any of the animals, so God makes him Eve. Let's see, fresh dinosaur. This one presentation has 1,400 slides, so I can't find it quickly here. But if the question is there a contradiction between chapter 1 and chapter 2? Absolutely not. It's just giving more details. Was that the gist of that question, brother?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Second part of the question was in dealing with creation and the 6-day creation. Would there be a difference between man's definition of time and God's definition of time in, I think, relation to the scriptures you mentioned yesterday, where to God 1 day would be 1,000 years? Right.
Well, on day 1, God made the heaven and the earth. On day 4, he made the stars, but he made the sun and the stars. He made the the plants on day 3. He made the sun on day 4. So to try to claim those days are longer than a day is silly. You're going to kill all the plants. They wouldn't. And insects that pollinate the plants, or animals, they're not made till the next day. So no, the days have to be normal 6 days of creation. And later in Exodus 20 and in Exodus 31, God said in 6 days he made heaven and earth and then rested. And that's why he wants man to work 6 days and rest. And Jesus said the creation of Adam was the beginning. So there's no possible way those days are anything other than normal 24-hour days. Okay?
All right, next question. Do you believe in the theory of plate tectonics, and was there once a supercontinent Pangea?
Okay, good question. On video number 6 of my series, I call it the Hovind theory, so nobody else gets blamed for it. It talks about the flood. Where did the water come from? What did it do? And where did it go? Pangea is, I think, on here. Hydroplate. What about Pangea? Okay. You kids are going to be told in school that all the continents used to fit together. How many have ever heard of this before? It's called the Pangea theory. Okay. They'll say South America and Africa seem to be a perfect fit. Well, they'll say the shapes of the continents seem to fit, and similar fossils are found on opposite sides of the ocean, which is true. What they don't tell you is those same fossils are found all over the world. Not just opposite sides, they're found everywhere. So they'll say there are magnetic reversals in the mid-Atlantic ridge, which is not true. What they don't tell you is, in order to make them fit, they shrank Africa 35 to 40% to make them fit. And Mexico and all of Central America are gone. Donde está Mexico? Panama, Costa Rica, Guatemala. They took them all out. They also don't tell you they twisted two continents one way and one the other way to make them fit. And they don't tell you what I think ought to be obvious to a kindergartner. If you take the water out of the oceans, you will notice there is dirt underneath. Isn't there? People say, Hovind, do you think the continents were ever connected? I say, what do you mean? They're still connected right now. Aren't they? Just the low places are full of water, that's all. It's not like the continents are lily pads floating in a bathtub, you know. They are connected. The earth has a solid crust. Low places are full of water. What do you mean, were they connected? Yeah, they still are. They'll say there are magnetic reversals. This is part of the Pangea theory. Textbooks, they talk about reversed polarity. This is just pure baloney. But it's in all that I taught Earth Science 15 years. There are no magnetic reversals in the ocean floor. This is one of the lies in the textbook. I give a long answer in video 6. What happened was, they found there are areas of stronger and weaker magnetism. Stronger, weaker, stronger, as you go out from the middle of the mid-Atlantic ridge. Stronger, weaker magnetism. So they drew a line through the middle of the sine wave and called everything below average a reversal, when it's not. It's simply below average. The line should be down there where the red line is. There are no magnetic reversals in the ocean floor. And we cover much more on that on video number 6. The Earth's magnetic field is getting weaker. That's been known for a long time. We're losing our magnetic strength. Walt Brown has by far the best, the hydroplate theory. There's a book out there on the table about the, he covers clearly about the magnetic reversals. They don't exist. There's hot basalt loses its magnetic strength. That's what it is. What they're actually measuring, stronger, weaker, they were finding the cracks in the basalt. As the basalt cracked from lifting up, the water would rush in, cooling it off. So certain areas of the ocean floor have a weaker magnetic signal, but it's not reversed. There's no places where a north-seeking compass will point south, any place on the ocean floor. Okay? But that's why I cover video number 6.
All right, the next question is, was there ever an ice age, and if so, when did it occur?
The ice age is also on video number 6, a long answer to that. Let's see, ice age. What about the ice age? I don't think there's any question. Ice came clear down to Kansas City, Missouri. Glaciers, there's real clear evidence of that, because glaciers push rocks along and make scratches, you know. They do clear evidence of an ice age. As the ice pushes along, it leaves behind, when it melts back, clear evidence, and it leaves behind piles of rocks. They're called terminal moraines or lateral moraines. I've climbed all over them, studied them. So yes, there was an ice age, but when does it fit? That ties into the theory of what froze the mammoths, the big hairy hippie elephants that are frozen standing up. Food still in their mouth. Didn't even swallow their last bite, and they're frozen. What happened? And it's not just one. I mean, millions, apparently, certainly hundreds of thousands of mammoths are found, died. They find the tusks all over the place. Alaska, Russia. A friend of mine up in Alaska goes, and they go mammoth tusk. They go for they mine them. They dig them out just to sell the ivory, the mammoths. So. The things about the mammoth, they're frozen upright. There's undigested food in their mouth and stomach. They died of suffocation. They didn't drown. There's no, the small ice crystals in the blood indicate they froze in less than 5 hours. So I got curious, how long would it take to freeze an elephant? I called Bird's Eye Frozen Food people in New York. I said, if I stuck an elephant in the freezer, what would happen? It was real quiet on the other end of the line for a minute. Like, who are you? They said, well, you'd have a crowded freezer. I said, yes, I know, but how long would it take to freeze an elephant solid? They said, oh, about 5 days, because the outside would freeze and the heat's trapped inside. How many ladies ever thawed out or froze a large turkey or something? You know, it takes 24 hours to thaw out a large turkey. So to get the mammoth to freeze in less than 5 hours, you've got to have about 300 below zero. Well, it never gets that cold. The coldest ever recorded on Earth, minus 127. Now that's pretty cold, but it's not cold enough to freeze the mammoths the way they're found frozen. So I go through on video 6 the Hovind theory. I think we got hit by an ice meteor, and I go through all the reasons why in video number 6. But yes, there was an ice age. It probably came at the same time as the flood and lasted for 100 years after the flood. Take a long time for the ice to melt back to where it is today. So watch video 6 if you want the long 30-minute answer on that. Okay? Other questions?
Our next question, if we are all descendants of Adam and Eve, and later of Noah, then why are there so many different types of people, such as African, Indian, Chinese, and etc.?
Good question. Most people refer to it as where did the races come from, but actually there's only one race. It's called the human race. And I get sick of these people talking about blacks and whites. I have never met a black man. I've never met a white man. I'm not white. Hold me an extra piece of white paper, you know. Here. This is white. I am not white, okay? I am light brown, and I've seen some dark brown, but I've never met a black man or a white man. If I did, I'd still be running. So we're just all different shades of brown, different skin colors. There's only one race, the human race. Let me get up to here. There are 4 or 5 theories about where the races, we call them races, where the skin colors come from. And I'll show you if I can ever get my PowerPoint to work here. Did I get it? Let's see, 7. Okay. Video number 7, DVD number 7 of my series has a long answer to that question. Let's see, Alt-DV. Oh, there it was. Okay. Where do the races, is it on here? Aha, there we go. These are my hyperlinks at the beginning. What about the races? Okay. I don't think anybody's going to argue with you. There are all kinds of different looking people on the planet. Different skin colors, different facial characteristics, but they're not races, they're only skin colors. It's called the human race. Are these different races of cows? No. They all look the same in the meat locker, and they all taste the same on the hamburger, okay? They're just cows, okay? But there are 4 different theories. One theory is that Adam and Eve were medium brown, and they produced all the varieties in the first generations. I mean, God likes variety. There's a dark brown couple that had very light brown babies. The second theory is God set a mark upon Cain. Now, I don't believe this one at all. I think this one's stupid and heresy. I don't believe it at all. But some people believe Cain, when he killed Abel, became black. Now that is to me really stupid and heresy, but that's what the Mormons teach. Official Mormon doctrine is Negroes are not, cannot make the priesthood. Read what the Mormons. I moved to Pensacola, what, 30 some years ago. 2 Mormon missionaries came pedaling up to my door within the first 2 weeks. Apparently they get a list of all the newcomers to town. And they knocked on the door and said, Mr. Hovind, we'd like to talk to you about the Lord. I said, well, that's great. Which Lord would you like to talk about, yours or mine? They said, oh, we worship the same God. I said, I don't think so, fellas. I said, does your God have a body like mine? They said, yep, God has a body like ours. I said, well, my Bible says God's a spirit, and they that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth. I said, does your God live on the planet Kolob, K-O-L-O-B? They said, yeah, we believe He does. I said, does your God have thousands of wives on Kolob? Oh man, thousands of them. I said, does your God have normal physical relations with those wives on Kolob to produce the spirit babies up in heaven? Yep. I said, and the human couple on earth only produces the body, and as the baby's being born, one of those spirit babies comes in and gets in that body, and it becomes a living soul. Is that what you believe? Yep, yep. I said, and if it's a good spirit baby in heaven, it gets a white-skinned body, but if it's a bad spirit baby, it gets a black-skinned body. Is that what you believe? They looked at each other for a minute, and the older one said, well, you're not supposed to know that, but yeah, that is what we teach. I said, guys, let me explain something to you. I know you have the tag that says elder, even though you're 17. But let me explain something. There are 2 babies born on earth every second. 2 a second. 24 hours a day. Never stops. That's how many are born. That's not how many attempts are made. Trust me. There are lots more attempts made than conceptions. And your God is up in heaven supplying a spirit for every one. When does he get time to breathe or eat or say hi to anybody? I mean, 2 a second, round the clock? I mean, I'm not believing that. They got back on their bike and pedaled away. I never saw them again. But one of the Mormon leaders said, if there's 1 drop of Negro blood in my children, they receive the curse. Shall I show you the law of God in regard to the African race? If the white man, who belongs to the chosen seed, mixes his blood with the seed of Cain, the penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. This will always be so. This is Mormon doctrine. I'm not anti-Mormon. I'm just for truth, okay? Now, the third theory says Noah put a curse on Canaan. I don't believe this one either. But it said Canaan will be a servant of servants. Well, people have enslaved people all through history. Whites and whites and whites and blacks and Chinese and Mongolians. The people are always in. There's slavery today all over the world. So I don't believe that theory at all. Canaan will be a servant. The fourth theory says at the Tower of Babel, after the flood, they broke up into languages. God divided them by their families, by their tongues, and by their nations. So if small groups went off and have to interbreed back to the same population, unusual traits can become pronounced. Like in Europe, the Habsburg dynasty. They got really strange looking people after a while because you had to marry royalty. And sometimes the only royalty available is your sister. There's a tribe of folks in Africa called the ostrich people. There's only 200 people in the tribe. And they always are intermarrying back to each other, and they only have 2 toes on their feet. Makes it really handy to climb palm trees. But it's a loss because of the inbreeding. There's a great loss of genetic information. So the Bible says the people were divided by their nations after the flood, and the good book on that is After the Flood by Bill Cooper. Japheth, one of Noah's sons, had 14 kids or grandkids. It's kind of hard to get them exactly right in there. Ham had 31 kids or grandkids, and Egypt is called the land of Ham. Several times in the Bible it refers to Egypt as the land of Ham. So the general theory, accepted theory among most scholars is that the sons of Japheth moved up and became what are today the Europeans. The sons of Ham moved down and became what are today the African nations. And the sons of Shem became the Orientals and later the Indians. Shem had 29 kids and grandkids. So that would make about 75 original people groups from the Tower of Babel. Now today there are all sorts of different languages, but many have a common root. Like English, German, and Danish probably came from the same root language. If you read the Beowulf poem, it's, tough to read, but that's English. Probably Spanish, Italian, French, and Latin had a common root language. Chinese has a very interesting story about the Chinese language with the gospel story right in the way the characters are made. Like the Chinese word for garden is dust, breath, 2 people in a garden. It equals garden. The Chinese word for boat is mouth, 8 mouths in a vessel. That's their symbol for boat, like Noah's Ark. A lot of good books have been written on that. So anyway, the Bible says all nations are of one blood. All of one blood. No reason whatsoever. Have we not all one Father? God said in the book of Malachi. So I probably hold to the Tower of Babel as the most likely cause of the different skin colors. Okay? Go ahead.
Very similar question. With all the cultures and races in the world today, do you believe that all those originated back to Noah's family?
Absolutely. Had to go back to Noah's family. Yes.
Okay. Next question was, how was God made?
How does God what?
Made.
How was God made? I was asked that question in a debate I did, 3-on-1. Just Google, "Where did God come from?" by Kent Hovind. There have been 50 million views of that on the internet. One atheist got a smart aleck answer. He said, "Where did God come from?" I said, "Well, sir, obviously you're thinking of the wrong God. Because God is not limited by time, space, or matter. We are the ones who are stuck in 2017. God is not stuck in 2017. This is not 2017 in heaven. He's outside of time, space, and matter, which is beyond our brain to think about. I'll give you an example to try to get it across. Suppose somebody gets in a raft to go down through Grand Canyon. And you're in a helicopter up above, and you can watch them get in the raft and start going through the canyon. A half hour later, another group takes off, going through the canyon. Every half hour, new group takes off. They're spaced out along the river, the winding back and forth. None of them can see each other. All of them can see you in the helicopter. You can see all of them at the same time. That river would be like time. They are stuck in time. They have to go with the flow. You are not stuck in time. You're in the helicopter up ahead, overhead. So we are stuck in 2017, and there's nothing you can do about it. How many of you have ever wished you could go back just even 2 seconds and undo what you just did? Like, whoa, that was dumb. Okay, don't do that. Well, God is not, He's not in our timeline. We are in the timeline. Now, if there's somebody in a helicopter up overhead watching you go through Grand Canyon, and you've got a radio or cell phone to talk to the guy, you would be an idiot not to listen to his advice, because he can see what's coming around the curve. If you come up and you say, yeah, can you hear me? He hollers back, yep, I hear you, just fine. You say, up ahead, it looks like it's real smooth on the left and it's real bumpy on the right. Should I stay to the left or stay to the right? He says, stay to the right. You say, no, you don't understand. It's real bumpy and rough on the right. It's real smooth on the left side of the river. Should I go left or go right? He says, stay to the right. You say, no, I don't think you understand. It's real smooth on the left. He says, yes. It's always smooth right before the waterfall. Stay to the right. You're going to go down the rapids. You don't want to go down the waterfall. Okay? You're right. You'd be an idiot not to listen to the guy in the helicopter. And I think you're an idiot not to read God's Word and just do what He says. You don't have to understand it. Just do it. He tells you what to do. Husbands, love your wives. Wives, obey your husbands. It's what it says. Colossians 3, 1 Peter 3, Ephesians 5. I mean, well, I don't like that rule. Well, I didn't write it. I'm just telling you what God said. Okay? Just do it. So just follow the Word. Okay, so God is not in time, space, or matter. So the question, where did He come from, is an invalid question, because come and from indicate a place or a time. And God's not stuck in any of those.
All right. Next question. Do you believe that Noah and his sons were larger than men of today due to the size of the timbers needed to build the ark? And the second part of that question is, did Noah have Nephilim, the giants, helping him?
Genesis chapter 6, the first 5 verses, takes place before the flood. Strange passage. It says there were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, they took them wives of all which they chose. And the same became giants, men of renown. I have read that passage till my brain hurts. I don't think I have a positive answer, but the most commonly accepted theory is that the fallen angels intermarried the daughters of men and produced half man, half demon offspring. I think I believe that, but I don't think the Bible's clear enough to make a dogmatic statement. The book of Jude may have a verse that ties in there, if you want to try to tie it together. But I don't think there's enough info to make a real strong doctrine over that. Whoever was produced back then, they all drowned in the flood. One theory says the half human, half demon were produced before the flood came. God destroyed them all. But the knowledge of that would continue through the flood. I mean, Shem, Ham, and Japheth probably saw these guys. And they would have told the stories to their kids and grandkids, and those stories got amplified and became the Zeus and Thor and the Babylonian gods and the Greek gods, and they probably got stretched and twisted, but are based in some kind of truth of some person who was able to do unusual things, like Mercury and, you know, could fly, or wings on the feet or something. I don't know. But that seems to fit. Again, to me the Bible's not clear enough to be dogmatic, but I think probably that's the case. I don't know. If you find out for sure, let me know, because I sure don't know.
All right, next question is, when did animals become meat eaters? Fall of man or after the flood? And if after the fall of man, why didn't the lions eat meat?
Certainly the Bible clearly teaches in Genesis chapter 9, after the flood, God said, Noah, now you can eat meat, and the animals are going to be afraid of you. They weren't afraid until after the flood. Noah didn't need cages on the ark, just rooms. And all the animals were friendly. Read Genesis 1, 29 and 30. Everything ate plants until after the flood. Now, the reason we had the flood is because people were disobedient. So whether they were eating meat or not before the flood, I don't know, but I don't think so. There's no mention of it. But they weren't obeying God anyway, so they didn't care what God said. But they were not told specifically you could eat meat until Genesis chapter 9. Now you can eat meat. Okay?
Right. Well, how old is the earth?
If you add up the dates in the Bible, it's real clear. And you got these charts here. The Bible teaches about 6,000. 4,000 BC was the creation. I'd say plus or minus 30 or 40 years, because there's so many variables. Like, was each one of these guys born exactly on the birthday of their dad? You know, I mean, there's several months leeway with each birth. So you probably could get a variation of, 20 or 30 years total. But I'd say about 6,000 years is the age of the earth completely.
Okay, next question is, on day 1, light was created, but the sun was not created until day 4. What was the light on day 1?
Well, God himself is light. And we have one English word, light, which really means two completely different things. That is a light, and it produces something that we call light. We have a light fixture that produces a light, which is, we understand by context, but it's really two different things. The Hebrew language has two different words, or and meor. God made the light before he made the source for the light. They would have one word, light, and another word for source for light, like sun, moon, stars. So it's clear in the Hebrew that there was light made before the sun, moon, stars. Now, God himself is light, so that's the best I can come up with, that he just was the light of the world.
All right. Where's this at? The evolutionists use the comparison to humans and apes due to a close gap of the DNA. Are we the closest? Is our DNA the closest to that of the ape?
The DNA, which is deoxyribonucleic acid, is the code, the list of instructions to make you. We have similar code to many other creatures. They used to say humans and apes are 98% similar. That's not true. It's about 91% similar. But let's assume there is a high 90 or 90% similarity between the code to make an ape and the code to make a human. What would that prove? Common designer. To the atheist, that proves common ancestor. I think you could point out all the lines of code to do Microsoft PowerPoint. If you lined them up compared to the lines of code to do Microsoft Word, there are probably tens of thousands of identical lines of code. Identical. Like both PowerPoint and Word have a spell check feature. I'd be willing to bet they both go to the same dictionary and have identical lines of code by the millions. So the fact that Microsoft PowerPoint and Microsoft Word, two computer programs, have 95% similar lines of code What does that prove? That proves they both evolved from Morse code 17 million years ago. That's their thinking. No, it proves a common designer. Did you know the lug nuts from a Chevy will fit on a Pontiac? That proves they both evolved from a skateboard. That's their fuzzy thinking. No, the same guys are designing them. And of course they want to use interchangeable parts. It saves a lot of money. You don't want to make every part from scratch for every car. Come on. It's common sense 101. So I think the fact, if God didn't make all the animals with a lot of similarities, we couldn't eat them and digest them and use them. You could only eat each other. I mean, God made it where the brown cow can eat the green grass and give the white milk, and I drink it and get the blonde hair. I mean, hello, similar code, that's all.
All right, that was the last of the questions that was issued. If you have a question, you can voice it out where you are. I'm going to repeat it so that our Facebook and our YouTube audience will be able to hear that. So if you have any questions, if you would, just raise your hands and I'll acknowledge you. Yes, sir.
It's not a question. It's backing up what Dr. Hovind said. In Hot Springs, South Dakota, which you've heard of.
I can barely understand what you're saying there. What now?
Hot Springs, South Dakota.
Hot Springs, South Dakota.
Hot Springs, I've been to Hot Springs, yep.
You know where the mammoth site is?
Yep.
They have all these mammoths, like he said, in the ground. The guy was grazing the ground, and tusk started coming up on top of the ground.
Yep.
And people have been there, like we've been there a lot. We've been in the basement where they take the old husk, and tusk and teeth and everything. But right there is a proven fact on 90% of what Dr. Hovind has been talking about. Because they said the elephant and the mammoth were both there together. They had tusks and skulls and everything of both animals there side by side in the same pit. So that's the backup of what he's been teaching and preaching that you can see for yourself. We're going to South Dakota. We've been there about 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
And it is amazing. But they're down only, what, 60, 75 feet. And they know that it's probably another 100 feet. What they said, the animals walk in and sinkhole and drown. And they're standing up. Some of them are laying down, some of them have been moved. But they're finding the old body, teeth, skeletons, tusks, everything.
Mm-hmm. Plus, they find them, it's called an articulated skeleton. All the bones are still connected.
Yes.
Today, when an animal dies, it gets scattered all over the woods by the coyotes and the buzzards and the ants. I mean, you don't find all the bones still connected. You know, the coyote drags off a leg this way and somebody else drags a leg that way. Millions. There's a place in Africa called the Karoo Formation, K-A-R-O-O, I think, where they find 800 million animals with backbones, all in one giant graveyard. There was a flood. So the fact that the skeletons are still articulated, put together, they had to be drowned and buried before somebody dragged them around the woods.
Anyone else? Yes.
Another thing Dr. Hovind used to teach and talk about was the snakes they found over in Africa, different parts, over 80 feet long, 90 feet long. I think this is showing that, but they, you know, that right there is another proof of how long things live.
Snakes in Africa?
Oh, the snakes and stuff, yeah. Well, reptiles never stop growing, and so the giant ones they find fossils of, we call dinosaurs, it lived before the flood came, when people were living to be 900. All right.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I've got a question. I watched the seminar you did about the Ark of the Covenant. I know you said it's been found. You showed pictures of it. I mean, has there been any further development with that?
His question is, because they're recording this for YouTube, I think, about the Ark of the Covenant right here. On my video number 7, I share what I have on that. If you read the book of Jeremiah, chapter 52, it talks about the stuff they carried away. The king came and captured the country and took away everything. It mentions the spoons, the cups, the gold, the silver, never mentions the Ark of the Covenant. Why didn't it mention, I mean, the most important piece of furniture to the Jews, about the size of this pulpit, you know, a gold-plated wooden box with insides the Ten Commandments. When they brought the stuff back, when Ezra brought it back 70 years later, Nehemiah brought forth out of Jerusalem, Ezra brought it back, 29 knives. Mentions the knives and spoons and forks, it doesn't mention the Ark of the Covenant. That's because it never left. Uzziah had made slings, basically, catapults to sling stones at the enemy. They used to sling great stones. And Nebuchadnezzar had built a wall around the city to keep the people in so they could conquer the city. Now, inside that, they knew, hey, we're going to lose. Every siege, if it's properly done, eventually wins. You can't hold out forever. And so, in Jeremiah, God told Jeremiah, you guys are going to lose. Tell the king to surrender. King didn't want to surrender. Isaiah and Jeremiah probably knew each other about the same time. So Jeremiah or Isaiah, one of those guys, took all the temple furniture, apparently, in a tunnel underground and hid it over on the northwest side of the city, underground. 600 years later, Jesus is crucified right on top of that spot. While he's crucified, the Bible says there was an earthquake and the rocks rent. His blood ran right down onto the mercy seat, which was 20 feet below. There's a lot on this topic on Ron Wyatt's website, WyattMuseum.com. Now, Ron told me that when he saw the ark and the blood of Jesus was still on it, the blood still dripping from the, not still hardened, but you can see it would have been dripping from the ceiling. The Jews learned, don't touch the ark. Uzzah touched it and God killed him, so they're afraid to touch it. But last I heard, it is still there. And the Jews know about it, and they're ready to get it out once they get a temple built. Now their temple is, it's very interesting, they found out on my video, in my book, What on Earth is About to Happen. I don't know if I have any left out there, but I'm putting together a video on this topic about end times, what's coming next. And because my laptop crashed, and this is a backup, I don't have all those slides for that. But I could show you, if you look at a city of Jerusalem, there's a Muslim mosque right there with a big gold dome on it. How many have seen that? I'm talking about the Mosque of Omar. Well, when the Muslims took over that land in about the year 600, they knew this Temple Mount, about 37 acres, a big raised platform in the city. They said, oh, we know the Jews are going to rebuild a temple here someday. We'll fix that. They built their mosque on the spot where they thought the temple was. It had been gone for 500 years. Nobody knew exactly where it was on this 37 acres. So they picked a spot and built their mosque. They now found out they missed it by about 150 yards. That's in the wrong spot. There's still plenty of room to build the temple on that spot. Then in the year 1530, the Muslim leader of Israel, at the time of the land, said, oh, I read a prophecy about Jesus coming back through the eastern gate. I'll fix that. And they brick shut the eastern gate. Well, they've now discovered that was the wrong eastern gate. I'll be covering all that. It's in my book, and I'll be covering all that in my seminar I do on what's coming next according to the Bible. What's going to happen soon, probably in the next 3 years, my guess, there's going to be a treaty that allows Israel to rebuild their temple. And they're going to buy that northern 15 acres or 20 acres off the Muslims for probably $400 bazillion and build their temple. There's going to be a 7-year treaty made according to Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. In the middle of the treaty, Antichrist will break the treaty 3.5 years later and set up either an image in the temple or cause them to offer a sacrifice that's abomination to the Jews. Something will happen to desolate the temple. And I cover all that in my book, What on Earth is About to Happen. So someone asked me while I was writing the book, Brother Hovind, when's the Lord coming back? I said, I do not know, and I'm not going to set a date. However, here's the 20 reasons why I think probably 2028 the Lord's coming, and I think the tribulation starts in 2021, and we're going to be here for the tribulation. Not for the wrath, but for the tribulation. And I don't have all my slides on that. We'll come back and talk about that. Okay? Other questions?
Going once?
Well, brother, one thing. If you look at my YouTube channel, Kent Hovind Official, way back a year ago, I did a whole session on that with all my slides and stuff about this topic. So go back and search the YouTube from Kent Hovind Official, maybe over a year ago. But I did quite a bit on end times, what's coming next according to the Bible.
Any final comments or closing?
Time to close?
Yes, sir.
Go for it. It's all yours,
more
brother.
Questions? Anyone else?
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you say about the eclipse tomorrow?
It's going to get dark.
I said a thing on Facebook that says if everybody was being as prepared for the coming of Christ as they are for the eclipse, we'd be doing a lot better wrong.
It's a natural phenomenon. Nothing's going to happen. It's going to be a nice cool day. It's going to cool things down. But nothing but a shadow. Don't be afraid of a shadow, folks. It's going to be fine.
Somewhere around the world doesn't happen about once a month.
Well, if the moon goes around the earth, but it's at a 10-degree angle. If it were not at that 10-degree angle, we'd get an eclipse every month. But because the moon's orbiting the earth at a 10-degree angle, that's why we don't get it very often. Everything has to line up just right, and it happens to line up tomorrow. And I did it back in what, 1970 or 64? I was like a small kid, 10 or 11 when it happened, you know, in Peoria, East Peoria. And it's pretty cool. The sun's going to go dark for what, about 15 minutes or 20 minutes? And
They did it in sometime in the middle 80s as well.
yeah,
For South Louisiana.
no big deal. Don't worry about it.
All right. Anyone else? Any final comments, sir?
Okay, thank you so much, brother. Enjoyed myself. Let me shut down here.
I do want to encourage you to stick around.